We elect our Congress members to represent us. So how does this work? And if we want to look at the big picture, the macro level, we have to look at how these elections work and how many people each Congress member or senator represents. So currently, now that we elect our senators directly, for both the Senate and the House, the winner of the plurality vote wins. What's a plurality vote? Basically means that the person with the most votes for them wins. So if there's 3 candidates running and they divide the vote almost evenly, with 2 candidates getting 33% each, and the third candidate getting the remaining 34% of the vote, that person with 34% of the vote, barely more than the third, wins because they got more votes than anyone else. They won the plurality. So that's all we mean, that the winner takes all, and the winner is just the person who got the most votes. This is sometimes called a first past the post system. It's different from proportional representation systems that are commonly used in Europe, but Britain uses a first past the post system. So we were already familiar with it when we were drafting the laws that govern elections. Now, on average, a House member represents 714,000 people. A senator represents 6.5 million people. But House districts are relatively equal sized, population-wise. So most House districts will be about 714,000 people. Because how state populations work, sometimes it doesn't work out exactly right. For example, states like Wyoming, with fewer than 714,000 residents, there are going to be fewer people in that House district. For example, Wyoming, like I've already used as our small state, Wyoming has only about 564,000 residents. So the House member for Wyoming only represents about 564,000 people, in contrast to the average House member who represents 714. But for the most part, the variance is quite small on that. For the Senate, the variance is huge. Why? Well, the 6.5 million, all I did was I divided the whole population of the United States, about 323 million, by 50, right? So 50 states, whole population divided by 50 gets us about 6.5 million people per state. But we know that's not actually an accurate representation of how many people are in each state. The 9 largest states are actually home to more than half of the population of the US. So, for example, California has 37 million people in the state. So Senator Feinstein, Dianne Feinstein, one of the 2 senators from California, represents 37 million people. Senator Cynthia Lummis from Wyoming, again, one of the 2 senators from Wyoming, she represents the whole population of Wyoming, which, as I've already said, is 564,000 people. So if you think about that, Senator Feinstein is going to have a much harder time representing the interests of 37 million people than Senator Lummis is going to have representing the interests of just over 500,000, right? Now, if you think about the states, Wyoming is a relatively homogenous state, meaning that there's not a ton of difference in what happens in one area of state versus the other. It's relatively rural and heavily agricultural. Whereas California is a very diverse state. You have San Francisco, which has a lot of universities, right? That Berkeley and all those. You have not actually in San Francisco, the north, I should say. Then you have Silicon Valley, high tech industry. Then you have heavily agricultural areas in the Napa Valley, and also oranges and onion fields, all that. And then you have Hollywood, which is, of course, entertainment industry. And then the very south, it's like a border state, because it is a border state. But you can see how people up in San Francisco may not really care about immigration issues the way someone down in La Jolla might. So Senator Feinstein is going to have to negotiate all those interests. Whereas Senator Loomis isn't going to have that much, that sort of broad of a demographic to deal with. So this can really affect senators' behavior.